Welcome for another edition of the Soxcast, filming here at Blue Sox Academy in the Sangertown Square Mall. I'm your host, Tim Best, and joining me, we've taken trips down memory lane before, but we haven't really gone as far as summer collegiate-wise, all the way back to the final days of the Utica Brewers, with the exception of Chris and Maya, but we're doing that today with our guest for this episode. Our franchise's all-time leader in strikeouts, and games played, pitched 27 games more than anyone in franchise history. And on the strikeout front, struck out 80 over the course of 63 innings. Guest today is Krystien Johnson-Battilana. Krystien, it's been a long time, man, but really good to catch up with you here on the show.
Yeah, good seeing you, man. It's been a while, and it's fun reconnecting, and getting to see the new academy there. It looks pretty sweet.
So, I mean, obviously it's a lot's changed since 8 years ago when you first arrived in Utica, and you came all the way from the Great White North. I know your hometown's Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Fun fact for your wrestling fans: birthplace of the Royal Rumble. It's a little fun fact, but anyways, what were your first impressions? Getting to Utica, and I mean the roster that you had. I mean, the record shouldn't be indicative of how solid this roster was. You obviously had a future major leaguer and an all-star in Cedric Mullins, but some dogs on the pitching staff with you, and then some really good position players too.
Yeah, when I first got there, I was real nervous. To be honest with you, I played at Davenport, but I didn't play much at all, and I had some decent stuff going in there, and was nervous but excited for the opportunity. I knew it was a really good league. I researched all these summer leagues, and I knew that obviously Perfect Game League is Perfect Game in itself, prestigious baseball organization, if you will. But I knew it was going to be a great league, and I was just looking for the opportunity to see where I was at compared to some of the other top players in the country. And yeah, it didn't disappoint. All the guys I played with there, there was tons of talent on our team and tons of talent on the other teams as well, and it was really competitive. And I thoroughly enjoyed every moment there, to be honest with you.
One of those great moments. I mean, you got to have it like within a week and a half. It's Father's Day, Adirondacks in town, and so is your father. And I mean, again, it's one thing to have a great outing on Father's Day, but to do it in front of your dad, getting the win against the Trailblazers, throwing 2 shutout innings, 5 strikeouts. I mean, how special was that? And just, take me to just like what was working to make you that dominant, and essentially, have that special moment with your dad, and for him to watch his son just go out there and shove.
Yeah, so my dad's always been the biggest supporter of me playing, and he he's always wanted me to pursue my dream, and he's been there right along way with me, and he's been just as much as me, passionate about my career. And he'd come to as many games as he could. He'd drive, even when I was playing at Davenport, he'd drive 5 hours on a Sunday to watch me start. And then he'd drive 5 hours home. Multiple weekends he'd do that, just to watch me pitch. And yeah, with him in the park and going through something like that, it was definitely something special. And I know he was definitely pumped up about it. He gets pretty nervous about it, but yeah, especially when you got friends and family in the park, it's really fun when you when you share those moments afterwards, and you perform the way that you want to, right?
Oh, 100%. Now, I want to fast forward a couple weeks. I mean, you come into this league and this team, you don't really know anybody, but fast forward 2 weeks, and this is my first summer working with this team, and I'm graduating high school at this point, and my graduation day is on an off day, and my grad party is the same day. And one of your teammates, Adam Paxton, a couple years ahead of me, graduated from Whitesboro as well. He pulls you, first baseman Hayden Kelly, and outfielder Mike Wright to my grad party. I mean, can we get the lowdown on the story and just, how that came to be? And, I mean, because I remember it well, but I need to hear your vantage point on all that.
Right. So Hayden Kelly was one of my roommates that year, and you know, it was a big deal when you have big name school guys, you know, who are on your team, let alone living with you, right? So, you know, he was from Florida State, and you know, he's a great player. He was one of our better players on the team, and you know, we had a pretty good relationship, and it was one of those things that, you know, it was, I think you guys call it the can jam or something like that,
Yeah.
but never really heard about it. But I heard it was something pretty cool and something fun. So yeah, I went along with those guys, and you know, it was a pretty cool thing. But yeah, you know, when guys like that, you know, you kind of gravitate towards guys like that you know, have success, and you want to surround yourself with good people like that. And Hayden's a good guy, and went to a big name school and stuff like that. So, you know, guys kind of gravitate towards them, and that's kind of how stuff like that, I guess, comes to fruition, I guess.
So speaking of another one of your roommates, talk about another great reliever. You know, Josh Guerin. I mean, it's you're. I mean, I, how do I? The best way I can equate is like a yin and yang type thing, because you know Guerin's this really eccentric, over the top guy. I mean, I love the way that he, get on Boyle's case and McGinty and even you to a certain extent. I mean, you know, what was that experience like rooming with him? And then, you know, like him being, you know, so like a joker for most of the day. And then, you know, like he gets the opportunity to go out there and close a game and just dominates.
Right. So anytime I hear Josh Guerin's name, I always just laugh, because he's a funny guy, man. He's one of those guys that, I mean, even to this day, I mean, we on occasion, you know, Snapchat each other back and forth, but he's one of those guys that he's just a total fun guy to be around, you know. Even when things don't go, you know, the way that you want him to, he's always joking, and you can always tell with his facial expression, right? He's got something funny going on in his mind, and you know, and you know, that's just the outside of baseball stuff. But you know, at the field and playing with him, he was a guy that you could learn a lot from, right? He had a, you know, for a smaller guy, he had a power arm, you know, wipeout slider. He knew how to pitch, and he went out there and performed like crazy. And he was a guy that everybody relied on, right? He took a big load on his shoulders, where you know, he'd go out there and people would have big expectations for him, and he'd deliver every time, right? So he was just a good dude all the way around. And no, I really enjoyed, he made my summer in Utica that year, you know, better being there for sure.
You know, after a season where, you know, living conditions aren't great, I mean, clubhouse conditions, all that, again, not really ideal at all. You know, most guys, you know, like they're like, yeah, no, I ain't coming back to this. But you, I mean, Adam Paxton, you can understand, he's a local, but you decided to come back in 2015. You know, what was the decision process behind that? And, you know, when you did come back, I mean, talk about a complete 180 of a roster turnaround. Hayden Kelly was from Florida State, but I mean, some of the big schools that were on this year's that 2015 roster: Ohio State, Wake Forest, UConn. I mean, tell me about that 180 and why you came back as well.
So I came back specifically because you know, I had an okay season the year before, but I thought that there was more for me to learn and grow in the league, and to just develop more. And I knew I'd get a lot of opportunity, you know, because I pitched pretty good the year before, and I just felt like there was more for me to almost prove that next season. But yeah, that it was a total 180 from year to year. It's an interesting look. And you know, me and Paxton are the only guys that played, you know, those back-to-back years. But it's interesting looking at it, because you know, the players had a different mentality. You know, the ownership changed. You know, a lot of good things were in the works, and you know, we just made the best of it, and guys had a lot more positive attitude. And you know, we just went out there and played and had fun, and it was a little bit easier when, you know, the environment became a little bit more fun and a little bit more positive. It was a little easier for us to play. It wasn't as stressful, and guys enjoyed each other a little bit more as well, because you're not, you know, not that guys were chippy before, but guys, when times are tough and you're not winning ball games, it's guys don't like it, right? So when you're winning ball games and there's positive environment, it's a great atmosphere.
And obviously, when you have clubhouse guys, I mean, the quintessential one, I mean, can't not bring up Aaron Smith. I mean, that guy, I mean, if there was anyone who could keep everyone loose and, upbeat, even if someone's down, just get them laughing just with something, saying or doing just something silly. I mean, Aaron Smith was that guy, but I really want, I mean, if you could touch on any more of those great characters that, made 2015 more enjoyable for you and for everyone for that matter, and leading to more on-field success too.
Yep. Yeah. So Aaron Smith, yeah, he was a fun guy. He's always dancing and goofing around in the clubhouse. And, he's one of those guys that he was a good ball player, but he always took things light, right? Like he was never serious, like never too serious. And he just had fun with the game, right? Which, looking back, I took everything very serious and personal. I wish I enjoyed the process a little bit more. Not that I didn't, but I wish I could kind of gravitate a little bit more to how Aaron Smith was, right? Where, great ball player. He went out and performed and did well, but he just enjoyed it, right? A lot. And he really had fun being there. And, I remember guys like Taylor Olmstead was a big name. Really, really enjoyed playing with him. He was a good guy that, it's always cool when you have a guy that, was drafted at a high school that, you kind of admire because, everybody's dream is to, even though you're playing college ball, is that you want to keep trying to, develop and play at the highest level you can. So, gravitating towards guys like that too, because they've had the success and try to learn and pick things from them. He was a great guy, but yeah, we had a lot of good players and fun guys on that team. Ryan Cox was a good guy, and a lot of those guys went on and had some success and are still playing and doing well. So I'm glad to see that they're still still going after it.
I mean, speaking of, fun overall things. I mean, one of the things, I don't know how much you partake in it, but obviously being on the team, you have to be familiar with it. But I mean, and I know it too. But the games of Mafia on the bus. Right. I mean, you want to talk about a group of guys that were just loose. I mean, just loosen up a little bit. I mean, when you're not playing less, but when you're playing more stress free, you tend to do better. I mean, those games of Mafia must have contributed a little bit to just playing more relaxed and more comfortably and doing better on the field.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you win ball games, especially, you don't, at least from what I've encountered, you don't really play games after guys are down. They don't, nobody's kind of talking to each other on the bus. It's a lot of people with, a lot of thinking going on mistakes that are made or records or all sorts of different thoughts that guys have, right? But when you're winning ball games, even if you don't perform the way you could have, or you didn't perform the way you'd like to, guys are loose and they're having fun. They're playing, like that, the Mafia game, and they're playing that, and you're, even if you're not playing, you're listening, and guys are kind of chippy, competitive even with that, going back and forth, and so it's just a lot better when you're winning ball games and guys are in there and they're having fun. Even if you're not doing well, it totally takes the stress off of everybody in the whole clubhouse, right?
So another thing I wanted to touch on, I mean, the presence of fellow Canadians on the 2015 squad. I mean, yeah, Jared Baldelli, Niagara Falls native, and then Connor Gibson, who was from Toronto. I mean, I feel like for you, seeing more Canadians on the roster, you were probably like yes.
Right. Yeah, Gibby was my roommate for a while there, and he was a good guy too. I mean, he had a really good attitude and did his thing when he could pitch and stuff like that. And he was just a positive guy to be around. And Baldelli's, he's a great player, and I really enjoyed having him around too, especially being from Canada, having somebody that, not like we're, super far away, but somebody that you can relate to, and, things that, that they know as well, because they're from the same area as you. And it just makes it a little bit easier to talk to somebody too. And, because when you first get on a team, you don't know these guys all that well. So it's kind of one of those icebreakers where, oh, you're from Niagara Falls, I'm from Hamilton, and you got something in common there where, it makes it a little easier transition between guys for sure.
And when it comes to Baldy, I mean, he was he took after you almost when he came back in 2016. But I mean, it's one thing to come back, but I mean, when you have something, I want to get your reaction to it, because I mean, just taking it in one summer and then you look from afar and see how big it became. But Baldelli walking up to Careless Whisper by George Michael.
Right.
I mean, what was it? I mean, it was one, because I know you were on the more serious side of picking. You had, fellow Canadian Drake headlines, but
Right.
for Baldy to throw a Careless Whisper, I mean, that must have gotten a chuckle out of you every single time you heard it coming, if you're in the bullpen or in the dugout.
Right. Yeah, it was, it was pretty funny. And, for me, it always screamed confidence, to be honest with you. The guy's walking up there with a song like that. I mean, there's no shame, right? He's ready to rock. And, he did his thing out there, and he was a great player. And, I think it was at Adirondack. I think he had a couple home runs there that were big for us. And, but yeah, he was a guy that went out there, and he almost, he had that attitude where he wasn't the biggest guy on the field or the fastest guy or the most power, but he'd go out there and he was just a bulldog. He just did his thing, and he contributed like everybody else, and he was a big help for the team for sure.
We'll get to that one of those Baldelli home runs in just a bit that you alluded to, but so let's talk about the home stretch. I mean, unlike the year before, I mean, you're in a playoff race, and it's top 3 teams in the division go to the playoffs, and you're neck and neck with the Newark Pilots for that third and final spot out of the West. And you end the season with a lengthy road trip because Utica's hosting the Legion Championships. Now, you get a doubleheader against the expansion Victor Rail Riders, who finished second in the division that year. And essentially, in order to be in a really good position to get in, you need to sweep. You guys win the first game. Tyler Palm pitches really well. And again, you're a bullpen guy, and you didn't really start a lot of games. You get the start in game 2, and you just dominate. 6 innings, 1 run. I mean, tell me what the mentality was like, and then what was working for you that led to finishing off that doubleheader sweep out in Victor.
Yeah, so when I enjoyed being a bullpen guy, because my logic was I could go in there, throw the snot out of it with my best stuff for an inning or 2, and that was that. But as a starter, especially in that game, I specifically remember Chris saying to me, go in there and just throw the heck out of it as long as you can, and when if you tire out or whatever happens, we'll get you some help with some of the strong arms we got coming out of the pen, right? So I felt good going into that game, knowing that I could let loose, right? A lot of guys who start, they kind of try to save on the gas tank, which I guess makes some sense, but I felt good going in there, just throwing my best stuff, similar to like I was when I was a reliever. And yeah, I mean, things went my way. I was, throwing strikes and, throwing my best stuff, just like a pen guy would. And, I was able to, perform the way I thought I could, and, everything went good. But I was grateful for that opportunity to start, because it was a good opportunity for me. I didn't get many starts, and it's good to have some of that experience under your belt too, right? For sure.
So the next night, I mean, this is the fabled game where Utica, after having at the time the worst season in the history of the PGCBL, clinching a playoff spot up in Boonville. And I don't know about you, I feel like as a pitcher, you must have hated pitching there, knowing how much of a hitter's heaven it was. But on this night, one of your fellow pitchers, Ryan Simpler, went out there and essentially negated it by just dominating, not letting Adirondack get a lick of anything. And Baldy, as you mentioned, one of those 2 home runs the final of those 2 came in that ball game. I mean, tell me about what that whole game was like, watching Simp dominate the way that he did, and to clinch that playoff spot just a year after you didn't even win 10 games.
Right. Yeah, that team was always a real, a competitive. They were real competitive with us, even if they didn't have their strongest rosters or anything like that. It was always a rivalry game, and they were fun games to be a part of. I mean, it was really chippy, and guys would be chirping at each other. Not that I like that so much, but that's how competitive it was. And yeah, I mean, Ryan Simpler was one of those guys that he had some pretty good stuff, but he'd just go out there and he'd throw strikes like nobody else, right? And he pressured them, and he's got good stuff along with that, and that's why he had success, and he had continued success. I think he ended up playing some pro ball in Australian Pro League, I think it was, and and Baldelli, yeah, he wasn't a guy that had much power, but he had some key plays for us and some big hits, and hit one of the biggest home runs on the season for us there, and it helped us, push us to that playoff spot, which was nice coming from a not so great season the year before.
I don't know if you remember this, but like I was doing the broadcast like up on that hill, and like it gotten like so quiet up to that point. Like I'm pretty sure if you were in the dugout or wherever, you probably would have heard me say that Newark, who you needed to lose and get a win to clinch that spot that night. I think you might have heard me announce that game had gone final, that Newark had lost, and you were maybe like an out or two away from winning this game. I mean, did you kind of like sense in the dugout, like, oh, like we're so close, like we can clinch the playoffs right now?
Right. So, from what I remember, I don't remember it being that. I don't remember us feeling that anxious or that much pressure on us. The guys acted like and played like, even though we were college players, they acted and played like pro guys, right? They had a calm demeanor about them. There was no stress or anxious situations, to pressure to do too much, to force things to happen. They just we just played and let the cards fall into place, right? And we played the ball game that we should have, and yeah, we won, and we were able to go to the playoff after a year that was one of the worst years in history, right? So it was a great turnaround, and the guys were definitely proud that of that accomplishment coming from that year previously, right?
Now, before we get to that playoff game in Victor, I mean, I want to take a little detour, and we can't not bring this story up to like make a connection between the past and the present. So obviously, current manager Doug Dullett. I mean, I'm in his makeshift office here, and as part of the set I have here at Blue Sox Academy. And partially, Doug is where he is now. I mean, I'm not saying it's 100%, but part of it, he kind of owes to you. I mean, tell me the story about how you got to know Dougie, and how much he helped you, in the home stretch of that 2015 season.
Yeah, so I went through a game where I mean, it got hot in those summers in Utica, and I got taken out of the game with dehydration. I ended up going to the hospital. They put an IV in me, get me on some fluids. But yeah, Doug was the guy there helping me out, and he obviously had my jersey on and everything like that still, and he was just talking to me about baseball stuff, and yeah, he told me he was an old pro guy, and was talking some ball to me, and told me that he wanted to get back into it, and he had a passion for it. And I said, hey man, listen, if you got a passion for it, go with what you're passionate about, and try to make that happen, right? So he ended up coming to a few games, and he used to talk with me and Jake Amoroso a lot, and he'd be in the bullpen when I was warming up, and we'd be just talking and going over some things, and knowing that he was a former pro guy, I took his advice for sure, and listened to him, and try to learn from anybody I can, right? And he actually tried to tell me to throw a two seam at the time, but I was striking out a lot of guys, that I was throwing a 4-seam. So I never ended up throwing that 2-seam that summer, but that following year I went to Davenport and I became a starter, and that's when I threw a 2-seam. I never went back to a 4-seam, but yeah, I mean, he helped me out in that way as well, right? And that was something that I'll never forget, that helped me have some success as a starter too, for sure. So yeah, he's been a great guy, and I really enjoyed listening to him and getting to know him in Utica, and yeah, I wish him nothing but continued success there.
Now, the playoff game in Victor, I mean, playoff jitters maybe, but as I've come to learn, I mean, Michael Messier, who had just been the ace for you guys. I mean, I think he was like 100th of a run away from sharing the ERA title, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, at that point, I mean, his arm was jello, and he clearly didn't have his best stuff against Victor. And Wei Young Sao, who one of those two Taiwanese pitchers that came over that summer, along with Chun Hao Lo. I mean, he didn't give up a single earned run the whole season, and then maybe he was tired or whatever, but he gives up a handful of earned runs, and Victor sends you home packing. What do you remember from that game? And like just seeing the tide of the game just like essentially like an avalanche, where it's like, oh, it just keeps getting like worse and worse. They just keep mounting this big lead, and just past the point of no return, just kind of accept like, oh, it's over now.
Yeah, so Messier was, I mean, he was one of the best pitchers in that league, if not probably the best pitcher in that league that year. He had a low 90s fastball. He was a big frame, 6'6" frame, and he went out there and threw a lot of strikes, and he just shoved every night, right? So he was a guy that we fed off of for sure. And towards the end of the season, guys get really tired. I mean, they play, all these games during the school year, and then they come and play summer ball, and then you're in the playoffs. I mean, you're well over 100 games at this point, and it takes a toll on your body, right? And not every game do guys have their best stuff, and it was one of those games where he didn't have his best stuff, and then Sal came in, and he was another guy that was exceptional through the season, and it was kind of like Messier had a kind of a tough start. Sal kind of had a tough go at it. It's like, I think the guys kind of felt like the cards just weren't going to fall into place that game. We kept battling, but came up a little short, right? But those guys were exceptional. I learned a lot from them. I really looked up to both of those guys. They really knew how to pitch, and it was just one of those games where stuff happens, right? But they're great people, and they were really, really good ball players too, for sure.
So, I mean, part of that turnaround, I mean, you could credit a lot of it to, the coaching staff, having a manager like Chris Amaya. Dylan Vitale was another great addition to the coaching staff as one of his assistants. I mean, speak about like what that culture change was like compared to the year before. I mean, you want to talk about the roster turnaround being a 180. So was the culture change, and then some.
Right. Yeah, Chris Amaya, I mean, he's a player's coach for sure. I really respect that guy a lot, coming into the situation that he came into. And I mean, he was just the utmost professional in every which way. I'm glad that he's back in Utica, and I hope that he has continued success. Dylan was a great guy too. He was a little bit younger, but he was a player's coach too. And I mean, when you got guys like that, it makes it way easier for the players to wanna play and work hard. Not that they don't when it's not like that, but to allow players to have the freedom to do what they want and need to do to be prepared to play is a lot better than being told what to do in and out, day in and day out. These guys are real good players. They've been doing it for a long time, and a lot of them, they know exactly what they need to do to be prepared. So you got to trust in those guys, the players, that they can do that, and coaches like Chris and Dylan allow that, and they really allow players to perform at the highest level. When we had a team dinner at Swifties, Chris was there, and he was just super relaxed and had a super positive attitude, and he was just another guy, right? He was never a guy that tried to push anything onto you or do this or do that because I'm the skip here or I'm the manager. It was he treated you just like almost like he was like a player and sort, right? So I really respect Chris and I'm glad he's back in Utica and I hope he has some more success there for sure.
And also, how instrumental was, the transition of ownership in that culture change as well? I mean, obviously, like they fully took over George Deke and his family in 2016, getting the name change back to the Blue Sox. And, obviously it has a lot of historical meaning. But yeah, I mean, how instrumental was the transition ownership in that culture change too?
Yeah, so I got to talk to George and he's a guy that carries himself from what I can tell he respects the game, he respects the players, he respects the hustle, and he's a very respectful guy from what I encountered with him. And I got nothing but good things to say about George. I chatted with him, I don't know, a couple of years ago on Facebook, but he was always welcoming for me to come back to Utica and wanted nothing but the best wishes for me if I chose to go somewhere else to play. And that's what it's about. And somebody like that I respect a lot because some coaches don't want that for guys. They make it hard for guys to leave teams and go elsewhere to continue their development. And when he was okay with me coming or going based on what I wanted for my career, that was something that I really respected, and that's something that really stuck with me with George.
So in the 7 years since that, you played your last game here in Utica, I mean, you've done a lot, in baseball, but I mean, you can't help but every now and then, check in to see how your former team has done. I mean, not a lot of guys, play multiple years here I mean, barely anyone did prior to you and Paxton. Then it became a formality for a lot of guys, like a Taylor Olmstead, who, was supposed to play 3 years. But I mean, I guess the question I have is, what's it been like watching from afar, the continued success of the franchise, going to the championship series the year after you in 2016, and then making playoff appearance after playoff appearance, and then watching, Doug Dullett take over as manager and already, start his managerial career here in Utica on such a good note.
Right. So I don't think that the steps that they're doing to have this success is coincidental. I think that what they're doing there, and they're surrounding themselves with the utmost professional people. When you talk about a guy like Taylor Olmstead being there for 3 years, I mean, what a good guy to have there for 3 years, right? And it's not ironic that they wanted him there for 3 years. I mean, he's a great player. He's playing pro ball right now. He outside of being a great player, he's a great guy, good clubhouse guy. I got a lot of respect for him. When you talk about other moves like Doug Dullett coming in and having the success he's had, it's not a coincidence that's occurring. He's, like I said, he's a great person. He's a player's coach in himself. And then, yeah, bringing in even another guy like Chris Amaya, who's a player's coach that's had success, that's, really for the players and respects the hustle and the game. It's not ironic that their organization's making a big turnaround right now. They're bringing in the key puzzles that they need, and it shows, right, for sure.
So overall, I mean, what does the city of Utica and, this organization mean to you now, and, the overall impact it's had on, your professional and your personal life since?
Yeah, Utica's a place that I consider like a home to me in essence. I mean, I was there for 2 years, and it was the beginning of my career when I played there, and I had great experiences. Met a lot of cool people. And it really shaped me to have the success I was able to have later on in baseball as well. Um, you know, you go brick by brick, and the foundation was made in Utica. And all the guys that I met there, and the competition, and I mean, I could go on and on. In the city, I love upstate New York. I think it's absolutely gorgeous there. And I was driving back there for that second year. Made me, the first year I was driving there, I was nervous. The second year I was driving there, I was pumped up and excited to go, and proud to be back there. So it means a lot to me, the city of Utica and the Blue Sox and everything that they've done for my career.
And, like I've been hyping this up, like up the wazoo, but I get, like to have an alumni weekend, like I've been in talks with you and a bunch of other guys about it, but I mean, like you consider this place a second home for you. And, like, obviously, like when that comes in the middle of July, like trust me, we're all going to welcome you back with open arms, but it was good to welcome you back with open arms here on the Soxcast. I know it's been a long time since we had really super in-depth conversation, just opening up in depth about all of your, career here in Utica and just some of the memories even before we even start recording. So it was really great doing that. Thanks for coming on the show. And, hopefully July we'll see you back here in the U for alumni weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. And, I wish you all the best and continued success, my friend. You're utmost professional as well. And you're very passionate about the game. So I appreciate that.
So that does it for this week's edition of the Soxcast. For Krystien Johnson-Battilana, I'm Tim Best. Thanks for tuning in. Happy Mother's Day. Definitely, part of why I'm wearing pink right now. It's only appropriate. But thanks for tuning in. Happy Mother's Day, and we'll catch y'all next week.